So, I talk about Ray Harryhausen a lot on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook page, and that's only because Harryhausen is the grandfather of sci-fi movie monsters and fantasy films. Without Harryhausen, you don't have James Cameron stuff. You don't have you wouldn't have Steven Spielberg or Lucas or any of the big names that led to big budget sci-fi films from the 70s on. So he definitely deserves a lot of recognition. I love his movies because I just love the charm and the look of the old Sinbad movies, Jason the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans. Harryhausen stuff, a lot of his movies actually introduced me to a lot of Greek mythology. Like my segue, my childhood to reading some of the Greek stories, like Perseus and the Gorgon, the story of the young man that flies too close to the sun and his wings melt. His name eludes me at the moment. I should know it. But the Odyssey, these are stories that I only got interested in after watching some of the Harryhausen films. And he touches it. He dabbles into a lot of fantasy and sci-fi pretty equally. Although I'd say probably a little more fantasy, but it always has some sort of science fiction element to it. So tonight, what I want to do is I want to rank my top 10 favorite Harryhausen films. A lot of people have already done this, and I suspect more will after. So I'm a little late to the game, but I'm going to shoot you my current favorite Harryhausen movie list as of right now. It could change. There's a couple movies that I could, in the top 2 or 3, that I could switch out at any time. I would say my number. Well, this is going to be hard because if I start from number one, I'm just going to throw a general top 10 list and I'll pick it apart from there. How about that? Because I'm kind of spitballing this. I obviously didn't really plan this video very thoroughly, but let me just spitball this and we'll go from there. I first of all have to rank my top 3. Jason the Argonauts is my number 1. It will be number 1. A close runner-up is The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad because of its elaborate monsters. It has some of the best animation, the best monsters I've ever seen Ray Harryhausen produce. I love the dragon and the cyclops and the giant two-headed vulture. It is so cool. And the cinematography is beautiful in that movie. And my third would be The Valley of Gwangi. The Valley of Gwangi. First of all, ever since I was a little kid, I loved dinosaurs, still do. But this movie has such a weird premise that it just, even though because it involves a prehistoric animal, you would almost think to rank that as a science fiction movie. But it's such a weird setting to put dinosaurs in that you almost want to call it just a straight up fantasy, because the world building in this movie is so weird. You got a bunch of dinosaurs found in a isolated, forbidden valley, and they're discovered by gypsies and cowboys somewhere in the middle of Mexico. I mean, there is no scientific explanation as to how they survived, other than, well, they're just so isolated from the rest of the world, time didn't evolve here, I guess. I don't know. But it really doesn't matter, because it's such a far-fetched movie that you just roll with the blood. You roll with the punches. The movie takes a while to get started, but once the cowboys make it to the valley and they find Gwangi and Allosaurus. By the way, I want to just throw out there that even though the T-Rex will always be a fan favorite, and I'm definitely one of those fans that thinks that considers the T-Rex the penultimate dinosaur, thanks to Jurassic Park. Allosaurus will always be a close runner-up because it was so prominently featured in films as the antagonist from the early 20th century up to the 60s and 70s. The Sir Arthur Conan Doyle book, the Allosaurus is the villain. The Valley of Gwangi, the Beast of Hollow Mountain, a much lesser version of the Valley of Gwangi. But, and 1 million years BC, it's a very prominent villain in Harryhausen films. And the design always looks mistakenly a lot like a T-Rex, even though Allosaurus didn't really look like a T-Rex. Its skull shape was a lot more narrow. But it's usually depicted as a little bit smaller than a Rex and as having kind of a gray, kind of this really weird gray texture, bluish hue texture, or bluish hue look. But that is part of the reason why I like this movie, because as a kid, and it kind of carried over in my adulthood, I always thought the Allosaurus is one of the coolest looking dinosaurs. And I like it that they make him the main villain of this movie. And not only that, but they give him a name, and they almost give this creature a personality. And you don't see that a lot in movies. Mostly the monsters they don't have a personality, they're just marauding creatures. But they give Gwangi a pretty interesting character. So I definitely recommend that film. So that's my top 3. Jason the Argonauts. I didn't talk about Jason the Argonauts. Oh crap. Jason, I guess I just kind of thought, well, everybody likes that movie the best, so why should I explain? But it's a classic story of the upcoming young hero making his hero's journey from one part of the world to the other. He goes from island to island to island, trying to on his quest to find a golden fleece to help save his people from a tyrant. And along the way, he finds lots of these mythical Greek monsters blocking his path. Talos is super cool. It's not my favorite Harryhausen creation, but it's one of the most impressive. It is super cool, actually kind of creepy. I love that it's such a big, looming, threatening character, but because it's a statue, the face is human and it's sculpted to look like a man, but it's blank. It's a blank, lifeless face. So it's definitely one of his creepiest character designs. I really like the guy that plays Jason, Todd Armstrong. He's a pretty likable hero. Hercules is actually in this movie, but not for long. He disappears towards the end of the first act of this film. He's not very smart. I wouldn't exactly call him likable. He seems to be a foil to Jason. Not on purpose. He's still a good guy with good intentions, but he's not smart. He's told he's one of those characters that if you tell him don't do this one thing, it's very simple, don't do this, he will do it and cause so many problems for everybody else. But this movie is remembered for its look, its epic, large scale look. The shots of the Argonauts walking across these valleys with these tall, beautiful mountain landscapes in the background. The shots of them rowing across the ocean. The shots on their ship. The shots of them taking on these monsters. It is all just amazing to look at. It is so cool. Dialogue's not memorable, but really you came here for the visual look, and it is an amazing visual story. So, and let's not forget, objectively speaking, the most impressive Harryhausen creation, the children, what is called in the movie, the children of the Hydra, the creature that's protecting the Golden Fleece, which in its own right is a very cool Harryhausen creation. And when I was a kid, it was one of my favorite Harryhausen monsters. But these creatures, the children of the Hydra, are a company of skeleton warriors that sprout out of the ground from the dragon's teeth. And they fight the Argonauts to the death. It is so cool to watch this this combination of this interaction of stop motion humanoids with actual live action people in sword fights. How they did that and made it look remotely real. I mean, you can tell it's stop motion, but the fact that when they swing their swords or their weapons with the Argonauts, they actually look like they're trading blows and they're actually interacting with each other and not fighting against some green screen creation. So there's lots of physical labor that went into producing this that really makes you, as a movie buff, really appreciate that. It makes you really appreciate these scenes. It makes it a true work of art. So that's why that movie stays at my number one. But anyway, the rest of my films that I haven't thought hard enough about it to be able to list them all of them strictly one by one. But 1 Million Years BC is another Harryhausen movie featuring dinosaurs. It involves these two cave people, a caveman, cavewoman. They get booted from their tribes, and so they're wandering across this land. In what era I don't know, because cavemen and dinosaurs never actually coexisted. So I don't know if this is the Cretaceous era, the Jurassic era, or if this is meant to be sometime during the caveman era when there were woolly mammoths. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But this movie has lots of man versus beast, man versus dinosaur scenes. The highlight being, I think, when the Allosaurus attacks there's another Allosaurus in this movie that attacks the lead hero. If you haven't seen this whole movie, you've probably seen the shot of Tumac. I think that's the hero's name. When he gets attacked, as this Allosaurus is charging towards him, he takes his spear, impales the dinosaur, and sticks it up in the air. It is so brutal. And so the Allosaurus is hanging up in the air by its stomach, and then eventually he lets the spear drop. It's pretty brutal. There's a great fight between a Triceratops and a Ceratosaurus, which really the Triceratops was bigger than the Ceratosaurus, so it shouldn't be much of a fight. But in this movie, they beefed it up to about the same size, just for the film's sake. There is no dialogue. The drawback about this movie is there is no dialogue. You have the two main characters that you follow, and they basically just repeat each other's names. They say Tumac and Luana over and over and over to each other. That's just like their universal language, and they interact with visual communication more than they do actual words, which is okay. I mean, I can understand why some people, I think a lot of mainstream audiences would be put off by this because they'd like to have some static form of communication. And that's a drawback, I think. But it didn't bother me that much because I just wanted to see the monsters. And the pacing is pretty good. It's not the look of these environments are pretty neat to look at. Not as good as Jason and the Argonauts, but they're still pretty cool. Another movie is The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. It inspired Godzilla. in the whole kaiju franchise. It's a very slow moving movie. That's its drawback. It's slow, but it is one of Harryhausen's early creations. And I don't know if it was Charles Schneer that produced this, but whatever producer or director was behind this definitely took their time slowly putting this movie together, which I consider a weakness because I like my stop motion B movies to move quickly. It has lots of stock characters, cliche characters that you just don't care about. No interesting dialogue. But once the movie reveals the dinosaur in full, called the Radosaurus, things get going, and the monster design is actually pretty cool. Even though it's technically a dinosaur, it's designed a lot more to look like a lizard, like a Komodo dragon with the head of a dinosaur. And it does have some cool looks. I have some cool shots of it. There's lots of shots of the dinosaur walking down when it's attacking New York City, it's walking in and out of shadow a lot, and that's a pretty cool stop motion effect. I don't know how Harryhausen did that, but you can see it as it's walking past these skyscrapers. It walks in and out of shadow, so that's a cool detail, visual design. So the creature itself is pretty cool, and the rampage in the third act makes it worthwhile. Definitely not his strongest film, but it's still pretty entertaining, and it's responsible for spawning a lot of really fun monster movies. The Golden Voyage, I'm just going to rank these really quickly. The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, and which stars Tom Baker. I call it the Tom Baker Sinbad movie, and that alone makes it stand out because you get to see Doctor Who portray a villain, a pretty good villain at that. Actually, he's a pretty layered, nuanced performer, and his villain, while he is a bad guy, you definitely feel invested in his journey as a dying, aging, very quickly aging wizard. So that definitely elevates this movie. Caroline Munro, she's okay. She didn't really do a whole lot in this movie. They definitely hired her to be Sinbad's girl, and she's stunning. Caroline Munro's a stunning actress, but they didn't give her much to do in this movie other than get kidnapped by monsters. So, and the movie has plenty of monsters too. Definitely random ones. You really feel like Charles Schneer and Harryhausen were just kind of reaching. Like they definitely didn't go into this movie thinking, okay, we've got to tell the story around this creature. It was definitely okay, we're gonna have another Sinbad adventure story. This is I think the second Sinbad movie they've made together. But they came up with some really odd ones. A centaur that's also a cyclops, a griffin, which is a lion with a bald eagle head, or an eagle head, and wings. Lots of green men. I mean, literally, they're all men painted green. Probably the best part of this movie is the Kali statue. It has the 6 arms and swords. So that's always entertaining. And the Sinbad in the Eye of the Tiger is okay. I like it just as far as an adventure story goes and the effects go, but there's nobody really memorable in this film other than John. I think John Wayne's son is in this. I'm not sure, 100% sure, but I think John Wayne's son is in this, portraying Sinbad. And Jane Seymour is in this movie as well in one of her early film performances. It's okay, but it's definitely tired. A tired formulaic movie. A movie that sticks out that I haven't mentioned is Clash of the Titans. Holy cow, it's it's Harryhausen's final film in the franchise, in his monster franchise. The final story he produced, or that he helped make, that relates to Greek mythology. And this movie really dives into Greek mythology. It tells 2 or 3 stories throughout this film, saving where Perseus, a son of Zeus, rescues a princess from a weird creature that's called Calibos, which used to be a human, but he was punished by Zeus and turned into this monster with a tail and horns, and it's weird, but it's definitely a cool looking character. And then you have Perseus trying to guess the princess's name. If he doesn't, he gets burned at the stake. And then, after all of this is said and done, he then has to go find Medusa and decapitate her so he can use her head to kill the Kraken. Wow. All of that in 3 movies. They got a lot of A-list actors in this. Burgess Meredith has a secondary role in this movie. Ursula Andress is in this movie. I wish I could say Liam Neeson is in this movie as Zeus, but he is not. But the rest of Maggie Smith from the Harry Potter movies and a bunch of other big hit films and shows I haven't seen. She's in this movie as one of the gods, one of the goddesses. I think Thetis, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. But again, the monsters are super cool. Definitely they're all definitely vast improvements over the Golden Voyage of Sinbad and Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. Medusa is the creepiest sequence when they go to fight Medusa's creepiest sequence in all of Harryhausen's movies. The way she crawls around real slow and deliberate like. She has a tail that flickers with a rattlesnake, with a rattle at the end of it. She doesn't have any speech. She looks very creepy. It almost looks like a horror movie. There's lots of dark shadows and cinematography in this scene that really, really puts you on edge as an audience member. So it's a very well made movie. It's definitely not as strong and feels very secondary to Jason and the Argonauts, as well as the 7th Voyage of Sinbad. But it's still a very strong final film for Harryhausen, and I'm glad that he ended on a high note, because this one's a very solid movie and highly recommended. Although there is a lot of violence, there's a lot more violence in this movie, more gore. Medusa's decapitation is kind of gross, goes without saying, and there is some nudity throughout the movie. Not much, but there's just enough to make it awkward if you've got your kids around. But it's a very good movie. So let's see. Jason the Argonauts, 7th Voyage of Sinbad, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, Valley of Gwangi, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, 1 Million Years BC, Clash of the Titans. I've got 2 movies left. Huh. I think one... I would say Earth versus the Flying Saucers is a pretty entertaining movie that actually is a precursor. If I'm going to list any more, I'd say Earth versus the Flying Saucers is pretty good. Not as visually compelling, obviously, as Independence Day, but definitely inspired Independence Day. And it's outshone by a lot of other alien invasion movies like whatever that movie was that Robert Wise directed and starred Michael Rennie. I can't think of it now, but that one was a far superior movie. And War of the Worlds is a better one. But just as far as Harryhausen movie goes, it's pretty entertaining. Hmm. What other films did he work on? I think he may have worked on Animal World, although I think that may have been, the visual direction may have been Willis O'Brien's work and not Harryhausen's, but even if O'Brien was involved in it, I'm sure Harryhausen had some involvement, had some experience working on that movie. Gosh, I might just call this my top 8 favorite Harryhausen movies, but I just really wanted to talk about those first few that I mentioned. All of his Sinbad movies, the Argonauts, and Clash of the Titans, and his dinosaur movies. Those are all amazing movies, and for me, they're a big a nostalgic escape. Kind of returns you to the mind of your mindset where you were in your childhood when you were 7 years old, 8 years old, or even 10. I think I was 10 when I saw Clash of the Titans. They all really have a place in your childhood, and I definitely plan on showing my kids these movies one day, and continuing that trend. So I hope you guys take something from this, like maybe plan your videos a little more in advance, actually make a list. I drew all this from memory because I've loved these movies so much. I thought I didn't need to memorize this or make a list. I thought I'd know them all by heart, which for the most part I do, I swear. But also take away how much work these early filmmakers put into these movies, and how many people these filmmakers inspired. Harryhausen inspired a whole subgenre of science fiction, and you gotta appreciate him for that. So at least take that away from all this. So anyway, you guys have a good evening, okay?